So everyone is wading into the Fender Stratocaster debate at the moment. I've got a few things to say about Fender. I think their product at the moment is brilliant. When you consider I was paying $1,000 for a beaten up Stratocaster, Fender Stratocaster in 1982, and then you shoot forward to 2026 and you can buy off the shelf a playable instrument. If you're using really light strings and you want to get all of the push-pull stuff going on, and maybe you can look at a custom-made instrument. But for off-the-shelf stuff, the Fender stuff is brilliant. I bought this Corona-made Strat, which I just love. It's got the 70s headstock. I sold a Fender back in the mid to late 80s that I'd had for years and years, and I always regretted selling it. A 1970, I think it was a 1974 Fender Stratocaster. I sold it for $400. But this is straight out of the box. I only paid I think $1,600 for it, and then I had to pay freight, so it ended up being around about $1,800, $1,900 all up. But I just can't fault the Fender stuff. I don't know why guys are complaining about it so much. Maybe the pro guys that need to have things tweaked. I mean, admittedly, I'm sort of semi-professional. I mean, I've played for years and years, but I wouldn't call myself a professional because I don't live day to day off the income of my instrument. But I would say the Fenders of today, particularly, I mean, the Mexican Stratocasters, they have a purpose for players like me that like weekend players, or, just playing for, as, hobbyist almost. They're fantastic. And it's only when you go to the really light strings and you want to do like fretboard gymnastics and stuff like that where you might want to get really picky about where you're going with it. But I really don't understand the Fender thing, and people whinging about Fender. I like Gibson guitars too. I've got Gibsons. I've been able to work and buy a reasonable collection of instruments now in my later years, and so I've got Fenders and couple of Gibsons and Gretschers, and I love them all. Young guys today, what you can buy off the shelf is just, I think, fantastic. You're really in the ballpark with player grade instruments, even with the budget line instruments. And it's because I can tell you the pro grade stuff in the 80s and 70s and 80s wasn't that great. Fender particularly lifted their game in the 80s. I don't know who the guy was that came along and sort of lifted the company up a bit, but they were doing badly early 80s, and some of the late 70s stuff was a little bit how's your father. They had the micro tilt neck and all of that sort of stuff, but they were still great guitars. They looked fantastic. I love the big 70s headstocks that they put on these American Fenders. And as for suing, I've never quite understood the copying the Fender thing. Leo Fender, he hired art guys, designers. These guys were, I don't even think they were musicians, the guys that would have designed the bodies of the Fenders. They might have been, but I'd say they were mostly artists, because they've got that Californian kind of hot rod look, that mid 50s stuff, when you had the American kind of hot rod scene, the Barris brothers and and then into the 60s with the Roth stuff, the Eddie Roth. And these guitars look like they could sort of be hanging out of the back, sitting on the back seat of a hot rod or something for a guy to play to his girl at the beach after he's been out for a ride on his board, hanging 10. But the other thing about the Fenders is you buy them for the tone. I would love to see more of these independent guitars. I think that's the problem. Most of the guys that run these companies now that make these copies, they're musicians. They're not artists. And so they're not really that innovative when it comes to design. That's why they keep copying the Fender stuff, right? So I kind of get why Fender gets pissed off with that. It's like, and when you see some of the magnificent cheap Japanese guitars from the 1960s, the Japanese had no trouble designing these wacky, wild instruments. They were kind of cool. If you get the guys that are into those Jap guitars from the 1960s, and they're, you know, I kind of must admit, you know, I think, yeah, I wouldn't mind collecting those, but I've got enough stuff, so I don't do it, you know. You had guys like Hound Dog Taylor playing these like $100 guitars with cheaply wound electronics and stuff, and they sounded fantastic. But it was about the tone. It wasn't. The industry changed in the 70s when there was kind of, you know, you got genre-based stuff coming out like the hard rock and all of that sort of stuff. Which I was a teenager during that age, and wouldn't mind making some videos about that. It wasn't as great on a whole lot of fronts as what a lot of people say. The 70s was hard. I mean, if you were a musician in the 70s and you heard someone like a Jimmy Weibel or a Jimmy Bryant, you almost felt like giving up. And then you had, you know, and remember, Alan Holdsworth and these guys were getting out. And you're a 13-year-old guitar, 14-year-old guitar player like I was, when bands like Soft Machine were putting out this stuff. And I thought, well, you know, I'll never be able to do anything quite like that. And I still can't. But I've developed my own thing, you know. And that's what it is. But yeah, there was this period in the 70s where young guys like myself, we started to get more attracted to the punk and the two-chord scene because it was more about attitude and, you know, the clothes and all of that sort of stuff. And it's not really till later on and I started buying Charlie Parker records and Charlie Christian records and stuff, and I thought, you know what, I should really learn how to play this instrument. I've been hanging around my neck for the last 10 years. I did sort of start to try and learn jazz and classical and all this stuff in the mid-70s, but there were just so many guys that were so good at that stuff. It just seemed, oh, look, you know, so you would kind of just drop your bundle and just go back and listen to the Sex Pistols or Deep Purple or one of the hard rock bands who at least had a couple of guitar licks that you could kind of pick out. And so that's what it was like in the 70s. And some of the pickers, the country pickers that were reaching their peak in the 1970s were just amazing. I imagine guitar players like Junior Brown came out of that school, you know, Roy Clark and these guys were just amazing. And even guys like Scotty Moore, the 50s guys, were almost untouchable to young guys like me at that time, you know. And but getting back to Fender, yeah, the Fender guitars are what they are. They look fantastic, and you are carrying American art. And so I can kind of get it. I've got heaps of ideas for these guitar companies because I'm into the art side of it as well. I like, you know, H-Bar-C shirts and all of that sort of stuff. The aesthetics of the industry to me is still almost as important as the music itself. Yeah, but Fender guitars, I can sort of get it. I sort of get it. And times are getting tough. There are ways, when you look at some of the... so if you go back to the 50s and the 60s and you look at what some of the companies were doing, like Microdot, Magnetone, they weren't copying Fender or Gibson. Yeah, there might have been some influences, but they were trying to do things different. And then you went for the mail order stuff, which I love just as much as the Fenders and the Gibsons, like the K guitars and the Silvertones, and I'm a big fan of National. I've got 2 or 3 National guitars. The arch tops are just fantastic. They look so wild, and those fiberglass guitars they made, again, that kind of Californian vibe. I know they came from Chicago. They were made in Chicago or somewhere like that. But yeah, the wild graphic art that was going on. What would be great is if some of these independent guitar makers, luthiers, who most of them are guitar players, thought, you know what, maybe we should start hiring, arts dudes and some of these, because when you look at companies like Cow Brand, which I think are just amazing. I can't afford that guy's guitars, but I would just love one of those Chester baritones or one of those guitars he's got. They just look incredible. They look like something out of a Jetsons cartoon. And I think that stuff is brilliant. And I think that guy, he is a guitar player, but I think he came more from the art side, commercial art, that sort of thing. And so I wouldn't go too hard on Fender on this. I think that whole sort of, custom Telecaster, Stratocaster thing has been overcooked for the last 20 years. Schecter were doing that stuff in the mid-80s, late 70s, mid-80s, in that period. And they were probably the best at it, in my opinion. I've played a lot of these kind of custom Fenders and stuff, and I don't get it. Maybe I've got to be a better player, more a studio guy, to understand why these guys can't play a Fender out of the box. Because to me, they just sound amazing. You can kind of play some Charlie Parker licks on it if you want to,